All right, now President Trump giving an update on the conflict with Iran, what he's revealing about the current state of play as we mark the passage of a major diplomatic deadline. So good morning, everybody. Hope the weekend was grand. Teams back together in New York. We are fresh and one of us is fresh and rested and ready. I'm Bill Hemmer.
I will carry you through this week. I have got to.
Please do.
But it's really good to be back. I missed everyone. I'm Dana Perino. This is America's Newsroom. And today ends the 60-day window to reach a broader deal with Iran. So that deadline was laid out in the Memorandum of Understanding, an agreement derailed by Iran's attacks on tanker ships and U.S. bases.
So now that fighting has slowed traffic in the Strait. This as we get new reporting from the Wall Street Journal. That paper says that Iran used the memo as a stalling tactic and has spent the past 2 months prepping for a larger war.
Meanwhile, President Trump is reiterating his stance on the conflict. He wrote on Truth Social this morning this: "The #1 goal is and always will be that Iran cannot have in any way, shape, or form a nuclear weapon." General Jack Keane is on deck with analysis, but let's begin in Tel Aviv, where Trey Yingst just spoke to President Trump. Good morning, Trey.
Yeah, Dana, good morning. Today, the Memorandum of Understanding between the United States and Iran expires. It's been 60 days since it was signed, and reports indicate very little diplomatic progress to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. All of this is taking place as President Trump told Fox News that Iran should put up the white flag of surrender. He added that I have no time schedule. I'm not in a hurry. The president also warned that he would bomb the S out of Oman if they got in the way, as reports indicate ongoing talks between Iran and Oman about control of the strait. Now, international shipping data indicated only 5 cargo ships passed through the strait on Saturday and none on Sunday. This is due to Iran continuing attacks on vessels. A bulk carrier reported being hit by an unknown projectile on Saturday. A day prior, an Emirati oil vessel was also targeted. President Trump said this about the critical waterway on Friday.
After we finish defeating Iran, which is being very badly defeated, pretty soon I'll be declaring the Hormuz Strait a territory of the United States. Essentially, that's what it is. We have the blockade.
This comes as Trump administration officials, including Jared Kushner, are in the region pursuing diplomatic avenues to address the ceasefire in Gaza. Kushner met Sunday in Egypt with Hamas chief Khalil al-Hayya to solidify the process for Hamas to lay down their weapons in Gaza. Kushner was joined by Board of Peace envoys Nikolai Mladenov and Tony Blair. Reports indicate he is meeting today with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who recently called the Board of Peace roadmap unacceptable.
Israel does not accept the 15-point document. The IDF will not carry out any withdrawal until Hamas is disarmed. And when I say disarming Hamas, it means heavy weaponry, lighter weaponry, all weaponry. And we are talking about genuine disarmament, not fictitious disarmament.
President Trump told Fox News that Israel should not be targeting Gaza right now and that Hamas has agreed to lay down their weapons. Now, Bill and Dana, we're getting some new information reported by Reuters this hour, just crossing the wires from an Iranian official that says the Iranians have decided to shift their policy from a defensive posture to a fully offensive one. This official goes on to say that Iran has set a deadline for a few weeks for full implementation of the Memorandum of Understanding with the United States. Bill, Dana?
All right, Trey Yingst, thank you. Lucky you on there.
Yes, so on a Monday, we love to have General Jack Keane with us again today. And, sir, really appreciate your analysis. A couple things here. What Trey's reporting, it's hitting the Reuters wire about Iran saying it's going to go on offense. Wall Street Journal's got this headline: Iran's secret plan to escalate the war. And they go into a lot of details about how Iran wants to step this thing up. Based on what you know and your own reporting and your own sources, what do you think of these headlines now?
Well, certainly going to the end, so-called, of the 60-day window here is largely pro forma and symbolic. I mean, we went to the ceasefire on April the 7th and entered a diplomatic phase. And after 4 months of this, to include the agreement we had with the Memorandum of Understanding, which the Iranians blew up a few days after it, despite the fact that the president had signed it, it certainly telegraphed loud and clear to all of us once again that even if Iran makes a deal, they're not going to comply with it. And that's the evidence we have to date. So I have been saying for a few weeks now that I think even though we're in this economic pressure campaign that we're executing, and what Secretary Bessent is doing is certainly remarkable. He's going the furthest we have ever gone in terms of opposing economic peril on the Iranians, in addition to the blockade we have. But I think where the Iranians are, they are going to ride this economic pressure out in their minds. They think they can withstand it. Even if their people rebel again, they will mow them down in the streets. That is where these guys are. And they think they can outlast us in terms of the economic phase of this. At the same time, I have been saying, and I think the Wall Street Journal has picked up on it from their sources, that the Iranians likely, given the midterm elections are coming, will increase the volatility and violence in the area to demonstrate to the American people that the management of the war is not going good. Because where are the Iranians coming from here? They pay huge attention to what happens in the United States and our political will, and they want to affect those elections. They don't want President Trump and the Republicans to maintain the control politically that they have. They would like to see the Democrats get some level of control over. I hate to get involved in politics, but I'm talking about where the Iranians are coming from, not where I'm coming from. And that's what's on their mind here. So yes, when you hear phrases like this, we're going on offense, one, that's a threat, and a lot of their threats are hollow. But I do think there is some substance to it for the reasons I just stated. So it's likely we may see something here going forward. Now, the Iranians, they miscalculate time and time again in not understanding who our president is. Remember, first in 47 years to ever confront him militarily. And two, if they push in that direction, I suspect the president will come down very, very strong on them once and for all. So we'll see where we are here. Mm-hmm. We're in an economic phase. That's the decision we've made. But the president has lots of options that he can go to in terms of military action when and if needed. That's the reality of it. And in a sense, the ball is a little bit in Iran's court to see what they're going to do here.
We had two other questions. Maybe I'll try to get both of them in. On President Trump last night saying that he has instructed Secretary of War Pete Hegseth to substantially reduce joint military exercises that were scheduled to begin with South Korea. Do you have an opinion on whether that it will give us some context? How should we be thinking about that in our viewers? Is it a big deal or not a big deal? I'm sure for the South Koreans it feels like a lot.
Yeah, I think there's some frustration over their lack of support for us in the war in Iran. The security arrangement we have with South Korea is all about North Korea. That's what it is. If we want them to do more than that, maybe we should go back and take a look at that security agreement and ask them, as part of the agreement, to assist us where we need help. We're not just going to assist them where they need help in terms of North Korean invasion. We've been here before. The South Koreans have built our military bases. They provide maintenance and logistics for us. They've got a strong military. But we've got 28,500 soldiers that have been there for years, standing tall, making certain that North Korea doesn't go south. And this relationship will outlast this disagreement we're having right now.
Okay, so, sorry. The CENTCOM commander visiting the USS Lincoln. There were questions about morale and questions about how these sailors at sea for, 200 days plus and counting, I do believe. And now the USS Washington is going to leave Japan and head for the Persian Gulf and give it relief. General, how significant was that visit, and what's important, do you think, that we should understand?
Yeah, well, first of all, I did talk to Admiral Cooper. He had a great visit with the troops there. They feel good about what's happening here. I've never seen such misrepresentation in the media of the actual facts that took place. A soldier fell overboard and was rescued. They were claiming that multiple soldiers were committing suicide. Not soldiers, sailors. I don't want to insult the sailors by calling them soldiers. But the reality is the misrepresentation has really been quite significant. I mean, I understand people disagree with the war. I got that. And those arguments should be made. But I'm glad Cooper went there. He wrote a great article in the Wall Street Journal op-ed that's worth reading to give you his assessment of what's took place. And it's insulting to these troops. I mean, they've been there for a long time, standing tall, representing the United States, and that's what they volunteered to do. And when they're doing something like that, they really feel good about the meaning and the purpose of what it's about, and their families are sacrificing as well. I mean, we should be very proud of them, wrapping our arms around them figuratively in terms of what they've accomplished. Well done. They're heading home to their families. It's good news.
Yeah.
All right, General Jack Keane, thank you as we get started on this Monday.
Thank you, sir. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.